Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Bava Kama Daf Ayin Dalad. Begin on the bottom line, the last word, Daf Ayin Gimel Beis. We're in the middle of a complex Gemara regarding this machlekes Abaye and Rava of Hakchasha Tchilas Hazama. We're going to explain as we begin what the context is of the raya of Rava and how Abaye refutes that raya. Turn to Daf we're going to turn to today's daf throughout the entire world. We're discussing today's daf are Rava holds Eidim Shehukchashu. So there's two types of ways, basic ways of getting a witness out of contention. One is Hakchasha, which is just contradicting what he's saying. You say he killed, I say he didn't kill. Okay, it's 2 against 2, we cancel out. It's another way, what's called Hazama. Hazama is very different. And it's a big chiddush that we're going to believe the other set of witnesses. Not only that, you're actually going to get the punishment you tried to bring on to the defendant. Now, what happens if they were hukchishu ulebesayv huzmu? So Rava holds, meaning there was a pair of witnesses that were contradicted by another pair of witnesses. Essentially, you would say they're bottled, they're out of contention. So there's no more testimony. When there's no testimony, there can't be hazama. Rava's chiddush is that even though they were already contradicted, but they could still have hazama, because hakchasha is tchilas hazama. Being refuted is the beginning stages of hazama. So we can say that we're finishing off. We had started the hazama with the hakchasha, and we're finishing it off now, which is a big chiddush. Again, the concept known as hakchasha tchilas hazama. And Abaye contends and says that not necessarily. Where would you say that could be that no, that if you already had hakchasha, you're out. There's no testimony. Now you can't be huzam anymore. You can't have hazama because I have no testimony with it. So important terms, concepts in today's daf are the halacha of yotze b'shem ba'ayin, that an eved, he gets released from his slavery if his eye or his tooth is knocked out, or one of the rashi avam, the one of the 24 major organs that don't come back. And the order of that is going to be the subject of the case regarding this halacha of hakchasha tchilas hazama, regarding what did the master do first? If he knocked out his teeth and his eyes, which the Gemara is going to ultimately ask and say, how do we know that to be true? But upon him, when you do one, he goes free. When you do the other one, then that's the one you have to pay for because you're already a free person. So what happens if, let's say, there's two cases that we're going to quote in the Brisa. Sime es ein abda v'hipel eshinai, where there was a pair of witnesses that said, first he blinded him, and then he knocked out his tooth. Now, who is that in favor for? That's in favor for the master, because teeth are less valuable than the eyes. Let's say he says that he knocked out his tooth and then he blinded him. Who is that more valuable for? That's more valuable for the slave, because he's going to get compensated for eyesight, because the first thing that was damaged is just what releases him from slavery. That you're not getting compensated for. But the second thing you do, it might have been 30 seconds later, it might have been a nanosecond later, but it was already you were freed of that injury. Then the next injury, you're already a free person getting injured, you have to get compensated for that. That's going to be the subject of the Reisha and the Seifa of the Brisa. So begin the current daf. Well, first we're going to go back to halfway through the Amar Naf Ayin Gimel Beis to get an understanding of what we're talking about over here. Rava said a halacha. He says, Eidim shehukchashu ulebesayv huzmu neragan. He said that if two witnesses testified that someone killed a person and they were sentenced to misa, a second set of Eidim were machish the first set and testified, no, that the person did not kill anyone. So that is hakchasha. One pair of witnesses said that he's guilty, another one says he didn't kill anyone. They contradict each other. Then a third set of Eidim then testified that the first Eidim were Eidim Zayim. Says Rava, the first Eidim are chayiv misa through the hazama. Their Eidus is not considered bottled through the early hakchasha, because the hakchasha tchilas hazama, hakchasha is considered the beginning of the hazama process. And says Rava, Mena Aminallah, says, where do I get this from? He quoted a Brisa. The Brisa says as follows: Mi'idanu bi'ishploini, we testify regarding this person. And now this is like we said, halt cup. This is very much that you have to hold the space for this brisa, because it's very difficult to translate what the brisa is saying. It's open for interpretation, and the interpretations are going to be the machlekes Abaye and Rava regarding this halacha of hakchasha tchilas hazama. So, Adanu beis Pliny, we're testifying of this person, Shesimes in Avdoi v'hipeleshina. This master knocked out his slave's eye and knocked out his tooth. Shari harav omer kain, because and the master he's saying this, he likes this, he's happy with this, and then to Zayman. So essentially, two Eidim are testifying that someone blinded his Eved Kanani and then later removed his tooth, in which the Eved becomes free for the eye, and the only pays the Eved the smallest sum of his tooth. And then the Eidim became Zayman. The Lacha says the Brayse Mishama Demei Ayin LaEved. The Eidim have to pay the Eved the value of his eye. Actually, the difference between the higher value of the eye and the lower value of the tooth, you have to pay for that because for the loss they wanted to cause him. The Seifa is the reverse. Mi'idanu es ish pleni shehipale sheinavdoi v'simoi eseinoi shari eved omer kain v'nim zuzayim. So the Eidim testified vice versa, that he first removed the Eved's tooth and then the eye, which the Eved becomes free because of the shein the tooth, and the owner pays the Eved the larger sum of his eye. So then the Eidim becomes Zayman mishamat me'ayin l'rav, because again they wanted to have that he's going to have to pay the larger sum, so the Eidim have to pay the owner the higher value of the Eved's eye for the loss they attempted to cause. So the Gemara asks, this doesn't make sense. You can't read the Brisa. If it's simply as it is with no other pair of witnesses, the Mishnah certainly cannot mean that there was no other Eidim who testified about this incident, because to make Kuli Eved l'Rabbo in the Shlomi, in both the Reisha and the Seifa, the Eidim should pay the owner the value of the entire Eved, which is the loss they attempted to cause him by having to set the Eved free based on that false testimony. There's the pink elephant. There's this. How can you say there's this slave that's going free based on their testimony? You're talking about the me'ayin, the me'shen, le'eved, le'rav. What does that mean? There's the whole slave that's going free that's not being mentioned. So this is where Rava develops his idea. He says, must be talking about the shalosh kitas. There's three pairs of witnesses. There's asubei trei. This is the one that's not mentioned in the Brisa. The first pair was not mentioned. That's the one he's adding on. The second two is mentioned, meaning the one that said the testimony and then the one that's being mazim them. But there's asubei trei v'amru. There was first hipul eshinoi and simes einoi. You have one set of Eidim testified that it first removed the tooth and then the eye. So what is that saying? The boy meisible harav the mei einoi. The Eved becomes free for the tooth. That's obvious. And then the owner has to pay the Eved the larger sum of his eye. That's what the first pair of witnesses were saying. Second pair came along. A second set. They said, no, einoi v'hadashinoi. It's his eye, then his tooth. And these are the words that the Brisa was saying. Sher de harav omer kain. But the Gemara said, what about Rav omer kain? Why would the Rav want his slave to go free? No. Everyone agrees that the slave's going free. It's just that harav omer kain, the owner is happy with this version of the story. That first the eye was knocked out, and then the tooth. So that means to say, of course I agree, says the master, that he's going free. But I like the second testimony's version better because I only have to pay for his tooth and not for having blinded him. Now the third set of witnesses, a third set of Eidim testified that the second set were Eidim Zaymamin. Now you have to recall that they already they were already contradicted by the that's what actually we're going to explain in a second. But they were contradicting each other regarding what would actually happen. So the witnesses come along and they say that the second pair of witnesses, how could you have said this? You with us, somewhere else at the same time. So Meshamed me'ayin le'eved. The second Eidim have to pay the Eved larger sum of his eye, which he would have lost through their Eidus. That's what they have to pay because they were saying that no, the second thing was the teeth, not the eyes. Who's losing out from that is the Eved. So the truth is that there's no proof for Hakasha Tchas Hazama, even though, and this is what we're going to see later on. We didn't see this part yet, but so far we were up to in the Gemara. The part that we saw was Rava describing the halacha of the three sets of witnesses, and he said that obviously you see hatkosha tkilas hazamahi, because even though they're contradicting each other, we see that hazama is still going to be applicable. That was what Rabbi wants to say. We're going to see that actually the raya is not from the Reisha case. This is what the Gemara is going to ultimately tell us, because even though the second Edom were contradicted by the first Edom before they became Zevin through the third Edom, because it's not true, they're not really being contradicted, because Yesh B'chla Masai Mana. The case that we actually end up following is actually, we actually end up following the second pair of witnesses, because what's called Yesh B'chla Masai Mana. We're going to see this shortly, but who do we end up following when we have this contradiction? What? Right, exactly. We would follow them. No, meaning we would follow the second pair of witnesses because they're the lesser of the two. Meaning you could only prosecute what's yes. So he would only give the teeth. So he actually wasn't contradicted. So it makes sense why you could do hazama. It's not akashat chaz hazama. Ultimately, it's the seifa, which we didn't quote yet. Shemar is going to go through. But it's going to be the safest case is going to be hakashat chaz hazama, because that's the opposite, where we find that they were skacha shalom meikara, because what they wanted to prosecute is more, and it's we're going to see it's going to be a different order of the. This is where it gets a little bit complicated of who is the peer that wasn't mentioned in the brisa, but al kapanim. The where we're at right now is where Abaya said, no, there's no raya to what you're trying to say for this halacha of the three pairs of witnesses, because the avchinu vazmininu. So what does Abaya say? Abaya says that the truth is, if you would have just the first pair of witnesses, the first two, then you wouldn't be able to have a third pair of witnesses doing hazama. Here is that there was only one pair of witnesses. So the question we had asked, if it's one pair of witnesses, then why are you saying mishalm demei ayin l'rav? What do you mean? In both cases, demei kula ever l'rav by l'shlumi, you should have to pay the whole. The reason what Rava developed his idea that there has to be three sets of witnesses is because then how do you read the brisa? The brisa is very difficult to read because they're talking about either paying the value of the eye or the teeth to the master, to the slave, but what's with the value of the entire slave that you're causing a loss to the master? He's going to have to pay. He's losing his slave. So Abai says no. That doesn't mean there was another set of witnesses. It's that. What happened is the Edom that did Hazama also had an opinion too of what happened. They said that day that you said what happened, you were actually with us somewhere else. But actually, it's true. It did happen on a different day, but it was the opposite order that you said. So the Manav Shach, the Eved's going out to freedom, and they're going to pay to him, the witnesses that were the false witnesses, the value of the eye that they wanted to cause him a loss. And the master's pleased that he's going out with his eye, and that he only has to give the value of the teeth. That's what Abaye was saying to refute Rabbi's raya, because no, the Eidei Hazama themselves were saying a different version. So they're not contradicting them on the actual slave going free. The slave's going to go free. That there's no hazama on. Hazama is only on the order. So says the Gemara Mimai. Says the Gemara, where do I get this from? Says Abaya. Says Getinta B'Abayin Dalmad Aleph. So it's mid the Seifa. From the fact that the Seifa is only two sets of witnesses, and b'meipech v'hazama, and that what happened is that the second pair of witnesses, not only do they invert the order, but they also do hazama to them. Reisha nami b'meipech v'hazama, the reisha is also by inverting and hazama. So Rashi tells us on the top Rashi, that the reason why we're suspending the Reisha and the Seifa is because really the Reisha, we're not pleased to really say it in two sets of witnesses. We would rather say it the way Rava says with three sets of witnesses, because the words of the Brisa were Shadei Harav Oimer Kain. It was saying this pair of witnesses that we're discussing, the Brisa was saying, oh, and the master is pleased with this. Now, had there not been another pair of witnesses before them to say the opposite, the master's not pleased with this because you're setting the slave free. So the ratio definitely sounds like Rava, that there must have been one pair of witnesses saying one thing. This second pair is saying that, let me tell you what happened, is that the eye was knocked out first and then the teeth. And Harav Oimerkin, the master's okay with what I'm saying, because he's only going to have to pay for the teeth. Now, if they were the only set of witnesses, the master's pleased. What do you mean only paying the teeth? He's losing his slave. No, he's losing his slave. If there was no other set of witnesses first, forget about paying less. You lost your slave. Forget about paying less. Less than what? There's no less. There was no other set of witnesses beforehand. No, but there was no. What does that mean? Less than smashing Empire State Building? No, he's not. Only if there's a set of witnesses first. There was a meaning. These witnesses came along and they said, let me tell you, he knocked out his eye and then his teeth. And the master, he likes the story that we're saying. Why does he like the story? He likes the story because he's paying less than what? But no one ever said such a narrative. If there was a pair of witnesses first that said the other way, he first knocked out his teeth and his eye, and then another pair of witnesses says, no. He knocked out his eye, then his teeth. And Harab Oimerkain, he likes our story. And then you have the Mazim them. So that makes sense, there's three. So really, Abai himself is also where he's coming from to contradict Rava, in the way Rava is interpreting the Reisha, is really only because of the Seifa that we're talking about, as we're going to explain right now, by two sets of witnesses, not three. And as we're going to explain, it has to be with what's called Meipech V'Hazama. They have to be not only saying the opposite of what they said, but also doing Hazama to them. So the Reisha also we're going to explain with Meipech V'Hazama. Where does Abai say, what's the case of the Seifa that makes it sound like that it's talking about Meipech V'Hazama? Like Dani Seifa. The Seifa said the opposite order. The Me'anu is explaining again. Remember, the Brisa is obtuse. It's not telling us more than one set of witnesses, but there's obviously more that's missing, and that's what the Machlekes Abai and Rava is here to interpret. The Brisa says like this: Me'adanu is explaining. We testify regarding this person. He knocked out his slave's tooth, and he blinded his eye. And because the slave is saying, like he's saying this narrative, meaning he likes this because A, he's going out free, and number two, he's getting the value of his eye, which obviously the more expensive of the two that he lost. But him to Zayman, turns out there's Zayman. What's that? They have to pay the value of the eye to the master. Because again, that's what they wanted to make him lose, was the value of the eye. Says Gemara, what's the case talking about? If these witnesses who are doing hazama to them, saying, hey, how could you have said this? What happened on that day and that time you were with us somewhere else? If the last pair of witnesses who are doing hazama to them don't agree b'chavla klal, they don't agree that there was any injury whatsoever. The whole story was made up. You're with us somewhere else, that's it. They don't say anything about agreeing to the injury. So I don't understand. Why these witnesses who are getting huzam, paying only the value of the eye to the master, they make kuli evelyn up by the shumalei. These first pair of witnesses have to pay the whole slave. No one ever said such a thing, and you made this whole thing up. So you have to pay the value of the slave. Elabshita, obviously, the kamaydu kula b'chava. No, everyone agrees. Even that are doing hazama to them, saying, "How could you have said this?" No, we agree that the master injured him. That's going to set him free. But the ko'avchinhu is the girsa. But they're flipping around the story. So, as Rashi explains, the master is gaining that he's going to be exempt from the value of the eye, which is more than the value of the teeth. Yeah, the slave is going free because everyone is agreeing to that. But the Eidim that are doing hazama they're not only doing hazama, they're also flipping around the story. They're saying that actually it's not true that the Eved knocked out his teeth, that he knocked out his Eved's teeth and then blinded him. He blinded him and then knocked out his teeth. That's one thing they're doing. Afchinu. They're flipping around the story. And vazminu. And they're saying, by the way, you guys weren't even there at that time. So whatever you tried to do, you're going to get the same punishment. Now, says Rashi in the Mas. Yeah, it's a different time. Yes, it still happened, but not the way you said the story, the opposite order. So you guys are going to get hazama for whatever you tried prosecuting, which was not to set the slave free, because the slave is free going anyway. We agree with that. What did you try to do that was not true? You tried to have that the slave is going to get the higher payout of his eye. That you're going to have to pay to the master what you wanted to cause him that loss. Wait, beforehand, Rashi, there must. What?
You said Avadim, we're giving Avis?
No, not the Avadim. This was about the Eved. They wanted to Eved to have the higher payout, so that's what they have to pay to the master. Now, Rashi explains in the Masechta Bazminu, he says, how is this Abaye's raya that we're talking about two sets of witnesses, not three? Because he says, here you cannot say like Rabba said in the Reisha, which would have been the same thing he said in the Reisha, that what happened is that there was a different pair of witnesses who came beforehand, and they said the opposite. They first said that he blinded his eye and knocked out his teeth, and then the second pair of witnesses come and say, no, he knocked out his teeth in his eye, and then you have a Zama. Why can't that be that the halach is talking about, that everyone agrees that he's going free? Well, Machlekes was regarding is it the eye or the teeth, and then you have a Zama. So, and that would make sense that you paid Demei Ayin L'Rav and not Demei Kulei Eved L'Rav. Why is this Abaye's raya? Says Rashi, no, this is Abaye's raya because if there was another pair of witnesses who came first, and then this pair that we're discussing in the Bryce, again, remember the Bryce is only mentioning one group of witnesses. But if they were the second one, the way Rabba said in the Reisha, that he knocked at his teeth and he blinded his eye, since we're not going to paskin the halacha based on this second pair of witnesses, we would be going like the first pair of witnesses, that they require the master to pay the value of the teeth, because within the value of the eye is the value of the teeth, which the additional amount is being contradicted. Evan agrees to what we call yesh b'chlam masai mana, that in the whatever is larger is included in the smaller. So we would be going like which pair of testimony? We'd be going like the first pair. So even if this later group of witnesses turned out to be Zayman, they would not be chayiv, because Edom Zayman is only liability, says the Gemara Makos Daf Hey, only if the Gemara Din was based on your testimony. So therefore, you cannot say the way Rabbi said in the Reisha that there was a pair said one way, and then the pair said the other way, and then the third pair came along and did Azama. Because you can't do Azama to them, because we're not paskening based on what they're saying. The Hazama only applies when we made a Psak Halacha, Gemara Din. Before we executed, Edom come and said, well, how could you have said the Hazama? But we never pasken based on what they're saying. Because since the two are contradicting, it's not like we're going to go like the first pair, because that's a small amount that they both agree on, which is the Mei Shen, not the Mei Ayin of the second pair. So therefore the Sefer would seem, according to the innocent flow, that we're talking about two pair of witnesses, like Abaya said, and Meipach v'Hazama. But just that that one who did Hazama also flipped it around. So everyone's agreeing to the that the slave's going free. The question is, which amount is he getting? So says Abaya, since the Sefer is Toma Meipach v'Hazama, the Reisha also is Meipach v'Hazama, not three sets of like Rava wanted to say, and Rava doesn't have his raya then. Rava's whole raya was that the Brisa must be talking about there was a pair of witnesses before this pair of witnesses. And still we're saying that there's Hazama at the end. Well, they already had Hakasha. Must be that Hakasha is Tchilas Hazama, because Edom Shahu Chushul B'Sev Huzmu Yisiag and Michayev. That's what Rabbi wanted to bring a raya. He says, no, not three pair of witnesses. There was only one pair of witnesses, that then a second pair came and did Hazama, and they also flipped it around. So they're agreeing to the slave going free, but they're contradicting them on the amount, and they're also doing Hazama to them. Now, says the Gemara, wait. What's this talking about? Meaning both the Reisha and the Sefer. Since now, according to Abaya, you're telling me he's explaining the Brisa when you do Meipach v'Hazama. Remember, Meipach just means that he's switching around the order, because again, it's critical what happened first. because the first injury that happens to the slave is what he goes free for. The second one is what he gets the payout for. So they're doing mepech, they're doing the opposite order, and hazama, which is whatever you tried to do that was not lawful, you're going to get the same prosecution that you tried to do to the defendant. That, what's it, when you say what's the point of hazama?
Why is it what are they getting added?
Hazama means that whatever, because when you're a ta'edim and you say something and you get contradicted, okay, you get contradicted, you just walk out of the courthouse. When there's hazama, when the witness say, wait a second, you're saying that this is what happened, but you were with us in a different place at the same time. The Torah says that you, the edim, are going to get the same execution that you tried to do. That's the difference of hazama.
Right, but he's saying here that's a different story. It's not Hazuma, it's just not the zoom of the whole story.
Right.
It's just a different order.
Right. There's two things. There's hakasha and there's hazama. Meaning, that's not really relevant. Meaning, that's Abaye trying to contradict Rava. Rava was saying there's hakasha first, and then there's hazama. If you say three pairs of witnesses, they were first contradicting each other. And then a third pair came along and said, not like one of them. So not only you guys got contradicted, but now you're going to get the punishment you tried to do. That's what Rava is proving from the Braisa. Because you see, they're going to have to pay whatever they tried to do. Problem was, well, didn't they try to do the whole slave? No, that the other pair of witnesses agreed to. That was what the point of Rava explaining the Braisa was for. So they only have to pay the me'ayin, the me'shen, whatever it is that they tried to cause a loss to the master or to the slave, which was the loss they were causing, whichever case it is, the ratio of the sefer. Abai says no raya. You don't say hakash hazama because there's only two pairs of witnesses, not three. But if there's only two and they're only doing hazama, because the Braisa is clearly talking about hazama, right? Saying whatever they tried to do, they're going to get back to themselves. Problem is, if there's only hazama, well, then you should pay the whole slave because no one ever contradicted. They say no. The Edom are doing hazama are also doing hakasha. They're afchinu. They're agreeing to the premise, just a different order. So hazama is only relevant on the demei ayin demei shen, because him going free, we agree it's either the eye or the teeth. The Edom who are doing hazama are agreeing to the premise. Now, the question that is going to be difficult is going to be the question we're going to ask right now, which is, wait a second. This is not really answering the question the way Abai is saying it, that to say that the Edom that are getting huzam are getting off the hook for letting the slave go free, because the Edom that are doing hazama themselves are agreeing to that, it's not so true. It says, since according to Abaya, he's saying that there's only two pairs of witnesses, not three, the way Rav said it. So, wait a second. If the second pair of witnesses, if they're saying that the story was later, so for example, let's say the first pair of witnesses said that this story with this master and the slave getting this huge brawl was on Sunday, and the second pair of witnesses say, no. It was on Monday, and not only that, it was actually the opposite order. So if that's the case, akati demei, and Rashi has the words kule, eved l'rav by Shloimy. Then the first pair of witnesses, the one that got huzim, should actually still have to pay the full value of the slave to the master. Why? Because when they were trying to prosecute the person, he was not yet responsible. Because when you want to hold him responsible from Sunday to let a slave go free, the Edom that are mazim them were not in agreement to that, because they say the story is only on Monday. So you should still have to pay the full value of the slave to the master, because when they were testifying the liability of the master was not liable even for letting his slave go free.
In general, in such a situation, why and how do we accept Edom from Edom? Because they generally would say that the ayin was first, because they're influenced by their disposition.
Say that again?
In general, why would we even accept Edom from Avadim?
No, we're not. The Avadim not saying Edis. There's a pair of witnesses that said that they saw this brawl happen, and the master he injured him twice. So one of them is setting him free, and the other one is going to have to be a monetary payment because he's a free person that was injured by his former master. And then Edom come along and say, buddies, You guys said it was on Sunday in this order. It was actually Monday in a different order.
When did they say the agents? They said it on Tuesday. Evan would have been free at that point anyway.
Right. So this is where it gets right. So this is where Kiva Ege discusses this. This on there's Rabbi Kiva Ege on Gilyon Hashas that discusses this point. Rashi should have said, after the testimony, that's when the story happened. Right? So that's Rabbi Kiva Ege's question. But let's say it was like that. So it was afterwards. When you guys tried prosecuting, he wasn't guilty yet. So if that's the case, so then why is he only paying for the value, let's say, of the eye? He should pay the value of the whole slave. Says the Gemara, no, the truth is that they agree, they're testifying that before the first group testified, the story already happened. So therefore, that's one thing you have to explain, according to Abaya. It can't be talking about that the second pair of witnesses were saying it afterwards, because then they would have to pay the full value of the slave. Moreover, the Gemara points out another point. Another clause you have to say, V'idale amad, if the slave had not brought his master yet bedin, because he has to claim in court to go free, before the first group testified, then akati demekuli eved l'rabbi l'shulmele. Then they would still have to pay the full value of the slave to the master. Why? Because he actually wanted to cause the entire slave as a loss. Why? Because the akati gaber lemechayev. Because the person is still not liable. Why? If he wanted to, this master, he could have came to court and admitted what he did, and he actually would have been off the hook. Because this is the classic halacha moed b'knas potter, because the freeing of a slave by knocking out his tooth or eye is not a monetary halacha, it's a penalty. It's a knas. It's not the exact value. The slave is worth, I don't know, $100,000, $200,000, and the eye is worth, I don't know, $30,000, whatever it is. But that sets him free. That's a biblical knas. Moed b'knas is potter. Whatever it is, whatever the knas is sending him free, that's
if it had blinded by his master,
he could be moida. It's just like anything. If a person's ma'anas a woman and he's moida, you mean just by being moida he's potter? All these knasim, all the biblical knasis, if you moida with knas, you're potter. So it's simply dal v'hei, when you slaughter the guy's animal and you come and you admit, you owe 5 times money, you come and admit you're potter. It's all the same halacha. So says the Gemara, el damad bedin. You have to say that there was already a court case for these injuries through different witnesses in a different court, and this is what? Right. So we're going to talk about later on, but to keep it simple, is like before anything, he just comes up to court and he admits. So then that's something that gets him off the hook. But the Rashi in the first wide lines explains what the Gemara is saying right now. What you have to say is that there must have been other witnesses in a different court that already said that the master has to leave his slave and let him go free. But he runs away with his slave. Now, if the master would come in front of us and admit it, his admission wouldn't do anything because he was already brought to court for what he did. Now, the slave is claiming, you knocked out my tooth and you blinded my eye, and I brought you to court. And you owe me the value of my eye. And he brought witnesses to testify that. Then other witnesses came along and vafchinu. They said the inverse, and they said, no. The court only prosecuted your master the value of your teeth. Moreover, the second pair of witnesses did hazama to that first pair. Oh, okay, so therefore, whether the case of the ratio or the seifa, the value of the evidence himself, that the witness is not going to be chayiv. Because from the first court, the slave already went free. And that everyone agrees to. And that there's nothing, you can't say that the Eved could have, the master could have came and been moed in that and it wouldn't have been potter, and therefore you witnesses who are testifying are making me lose the value of the slave. It's too. No, it's just that this that he was holding on to the slave, it's only the value of the eye you'll pay to the slave in the first case, because it's the money of the eye that the master is holding on to from the first court, and that's what these witnesses want to let him off the hook from that. That's what they said. The master sherab oimer kain. The case of the seifa, you have to pay the value of the eye to the master because they were the way the order was that they wanted to they were lying and trying to prosecute the master for more. But what we're saying is it must be that they agree. It's just that they're flipping around the order. Because if not, since there's no witnesses in the first court, then you're right. You would have to pay the full value of a slave because of he could have been made the beknas. So therefore, again, two clauses we have to explain for Abai is the way he's interpreting when there's only two sets of witnesses. One is that the one who are being mazim and they're flipping it around, they have to be talking about something that happened before, not later. And also, it has to be talking about that there was already hamad bedin. It has to be there was already a court case, because if not, then you would still have to pay the full value of the slave, not just the didmei ayin or shein, because he could have been made the beknas, he would have been parted that way. Now, going back to what we said before, the Gemara is not done with this because it's still not clear. Meaning, we have a buyer refuting what Rava says, but now the Gemara wants to understand what Rava himself was saying. He says, Duki de Rava. This inference of Rava that he wants to say his halacha about kashat chilas hazamahi, that refuting a pair of witnesses does not nullify them that you can't do hazam anymore. Mehecha, where does he get this from? And this is what we started explaining earlier. And that is, if you think to say it's from the case of the Reisha where he explained it, and that's what we said in the previous daf, that he said that it must be talking about three pairs of witnesses. At the end of the day, by the case of the Reisha, Miko mischashchim mitzioi, this is what we said we'll explain later on, which over here on this slide, that is really the middle group refuted to say that, the Eidos, you would have thought that the testimony is nullified with the first Hakasha to say that, even though they're mukish, but it's the chilas hazama that we can still do hazama to them. It's not true. Even the ilemisazmi, if the hazama would not be done to them, sadusa kavasayu could come. The halacha actually would be like the second pair of witnesses, the dina kavasayu paskin, because actually the halacha would be paskin like them. That what would you be doing if the first pair of witnesses, and this is what Rabbi explained the previous time, first pair of witnesses, which is not mentioned in the Brisa, but we said it must be there. They said that he would have to pay the value of the eye. And the second pair of witnesses said, no, it was the eye, then the teeth. He would have to pay the value of the teeth. Which one would you be giving? You would be giving the value of the teeth. Because the Yeshbachla Masaimana, what do both pair of witnesses agree to? They both agree to the value of the teeth, which is, let's say, 100. What they disagree about is the value of the eye, which is, let's say, 200. But including 200 is 100. So it's actually the first pair of witnesses that are refuted. The middle group is not refuted at all. So that's why, of course, you could do hazama to them. But if, let's say, two people say he killed someone and two people say he didn't kill someone, where the first pair is refuted and we don't kill him, truth is, I would tell you that since their testimony is nullified, that hazama wouldn't help. So this wouldn't prove Rava's halacha from the case of the Reisha. So Malay, so he said to him, you're right. Rabbi Sava, he holds the flip of what we did for Abaya. Abaya wanted to show that the Sefer is talking about Afchinhu Hazama, and therefore the Reisha also. So Rabbi says the Gemara, Rabbi holds Midadesh B'Shalosh Kitas from the fact that the Reisha is talking about three pairs of witnesses, which we said, when you say Shaharav Oimer Kain, by this pair of witnesses, that wording definitely seems to indicate that there was a different pair of witnesses beforehand that were trying to hold them more liable, meaning for the value of the eye, and that this group that we're talking about in the Brisa, the Sumatif, must be the second pair, not the first pair. So therefore, when you have a third pair doing Hazama, that's the third, and therefore the ratio definitely sounds like we're talking about three pairs. So Sevenam B'Shalish. So it was also talking about three pairs. So it's talking about three pairs. So B'Dayik Miseifa. So his inference is from the case of the Sefer, meaning, although you're right, the case of the Sefer is not possible to be that you had another pair of witnesses beforehand. Because if that would be the case, that the first one said that he blinded him and then he knocked at his tooth, and that these are saying that he knocked at his tooth and he blinded him, that then you would not be paskening based on them to give the value of the eye. You would only give the value of the teeth, like we said, because that's included in what both of them are agreeing to. So since you're not paskening based on the middle pair, so then this middle pair would not be chayiv on hazam. And that's what we said before for Abaya, why the safest seems to be Lefumriyata, that only 2 pairs of witnesses. No, you could have 3 pairs of witnesses. How? Says the Gemara, a different way. Going to asu beitrei ba'amri, that you had 2 pair of witnesses that said, first, meaning the one that we're saying is actually now the first one. All along we were saying that the hidden pair of witnesses that we didn't talk about, they were the first one. Here we're saying the other way around. No, the one that we're talking about is actually the first one. People that first they said that he knocked at his tooth and blinded his eye. The courts are paskening. Okay, he has to give up the value of the eye to the slave. Then came along 2 others and they said, no. He first blinded his eye, then he knocked at his tooth. That they're refuting the first pair of witnesses and they're nullifying their testimony because you're not giving the extra monies. We're going like the second ones. And then it turns out that the first ones are Edim Zaymin through the third pair. Mishalman de me'ayin larav, that we're going to pay the value of the eye to the master, which they wanted to make him lose. Now, if you're going to think to say that refuting is not the beginning of Azama, why are they paying? But they got refuted already from the beginning. Obviously, and again, remember, they were the first ones to say what we're agreeing to, so we would be going based on what they're saying, because there was already Hamad Bedin, and that's why it's important to switch around the order. But Lamais they refuted because we're not giving the value of the we're not giving the value of the eye to the slave. We were going to, and therefore that's what they were having Hazama on. But they already had a kash on that. So you see, but even though they had a kasha, but you ultimately could do Hazama. That was Rabbi's Raya from the case of the Sefer. Abai would tell you no. Beishlama understand the ratio leisagi. It's not possible. You're right. The simple understanding, Abai concedes that the Sefer makes sense for Rava, the loy shalish kitas. It can't really be without 3 pairs. Because the words harab aimer kain seems to indicate that there was someone who said something first that because the master is not pleased. The master can't say, I like this order of eye then teeth, unless there was someone first who said teeth then eye. So you're right, the wording seems to indicate there that there was another pair of witnesses before him. Ela Seifa, but the Seifa, Lamali, why do I have to explain it by pushing which Shalish Kita is? But I mean, it's enough for 2 pairs. Like Abayi was saying, Afchinu v'azminu. And the ratio, you're right, like it sounds like it's talking about 3, and not with Afchinu. But from that, anyways, we said you can't learn that anything anyway, as we said before. It's only the case of the Seifa that would prove the point. Case of the ratio wouldn't prove the point anyway. And, so what are you saying? But the case of Seifa, the words Ashtarei Ha'evedoy Merkain, which would seem to say that, why is the slave saying this? The slave is saying this because it must be that there was a different pair of witnesses that were first saying, not what the slave is pleased? Not true, that's not a raya. The slave is pleased whatever the order is, because I just want to go free. I don't care what the order is. So therefore that would not prove that there was another pair of witnesses beforehand. And therefore Abai says there's no raya to Rava from this brayser for his halacha of Akash Tchilas Hazama. That really ends the more difficult part of this daf. But Maskevler Reb Zera. Remember, so essentially what we did was we had a broader brayser that was very difficult to translate. It obviously was missing something, that you have to say something more than just the simple reading, because the simple reading had too many problems with that. Rava was inferring from that, from the case of the Reisha, that there must be another pair of witnesses beforehand, and that's not his raya. But if the Reisha is talking about the 3 pairs of witnesses, Seifa also must be talking about 3 pairs of witnesses. That's the case of the raya. Abai says, no. You could actually say it's talking about 2 pairs of witnesses, but it's avchinu v'azminu, and the Seifa indicates like that. Now, but that's the Seifa. But if the Seifa is talking about avchinu v'azminu, so do the Reisha is talking about avchinu v'azminu, and it's only talking about 2 pairs of witnesses. But really, Rava's real raya was in the case of the Seifa. The Abai says that don't tell me it's 3 pairs of witnesses because the Reisha is. To the contrary, it actually sounds like from the Seifa that's actually 2 pairs of witnesses, and therefore I'll tell you the Reisha is also 2 pairs of witnesses, and therefore it doesn't do anything for Rava to tell me Hakasha Tchilas Hazama, because there was no other pair of witnesses that first refuted them, and then a 3rd pair of witnesses coming and doing Hazama. That's the synopsis of what was discussed till now. But Master Razer, now Razer asks on the whole principle of the Brisa. The whole Brisa's principle is based on, what happened first? And that's important because okay, whatever happened second was done to a free person, and now you're gonna have to pay the value, and that's the whole question. What were they trying to do? Who were they causing a loss to by saying the second thing was a loss to the slave, was a loss to the master? If you said the teeth were second, then it's a loss to the slave. You're saying the eye was second, it's a loss to the master. He's gonna pay more. Master B'Zeri has a difficulty with his whole halacha. Amen. Maybe say simas einai when you blind his eyes to get into the base. Okay, it goes out free with his eye. Hipulashina, you knock at his tooth. Nipulashina, it goes out with his teeth. Simas in hipulashina, if you blind his eye and you knock at his teeth, both of them. Who cares what the order is? You should never give him money. He'll go free with both of them. But what makes you think that you'll pay for the second one? Meaning to say you injure him. But who said that we're going to go ahead and now qualify the whole thing as a kanas? You can tell me, he got free that second? Amabai says, Allah Makran, the pasuk says in Shemais, it says that tachas einai. It says if a person is going to injure the eye of a slave or the eye of a maidservant and he's going to destroy it, you're going to have to send him free tachas einai in place of his eye. What does that mean? Well, like tachas einai b'shinai, not in place of his eye and his tooth. So that's teaching us also tachas shina in place of his tooth, like tachas shina b'einai, not in place of his tooth and his eye. Meaning, it says in the singular, it talks about only one of them. To tell me that's what's going to send him free. The other one, you're already going to have to pay for it like a free person.
Why would any owner not murder when it's not before he goes free?
That's a good question. Maybe he would. But if he's not, then he doesn't. Yeah, it's a good question. I'm going to read about Oven. He says, we also learned in our Mishnah like Rava. Where do we see this? Someone stole based on two witnesses. This is what our parak is talking about. This is where it comes back in. And he slaughtered or sold it based on those same two witnesses. He comes at those witnesses who said he stole and that he slaughtered our zaymin. So they have to pay to the defendant the whole amount that they wanted to prosecute him. Says the Gemara, a premise. My love, isn't it talking about the idu ala geneva? First, the testimony was regarding the theft, meaning they said he stole on Sunday. Then they testified regarding the slaughtering that he said he slaughtered on Monday. Then Hazama was done on Tuesday regarding what they said on Sunday. And then Hazama was done on them on Wednesday for what they said on Monday. So it's all in order. Testimony 1, 2, and Hazama 3, 4. Question is, but once there was Hazama already on the Geneva on Tuesday, so that's essentially a refutation of the testimony of Tzvicha. Because Tzvicha has no relevancy if there was no Geneva. So it's already essentially machashet. And still we say they have to pay dal v'hei, even though from Tuesday, you're already mukash on the Tzvicha, because if you didn't steal, you didn't slaughter. If you hold like a baya, that the refutation is not the beginning of the Hazama, so why you end up paying on Wednesday for the Hazama of the Tzvicha? Obviously, you like Rava that the refutation is the beginning of the Hazama. They said no, it's not a raya. Because you could say it's talking about Kagoin, Shehuzmal Tzvicha Tchila. That actually, that on Tuesday was actually first got refuted, he first got Hazama on the slaughtering. So then they became liable for paying 3 times the amount. But the Eidos of Geneva was still valid. And when they had Hazama on Wednesday, then it became Chai for the Kefil, which is 5. So it's no Hakash to Hazama, it was Hazama first, and therefore it's not a raya to Rava. But says the machlekes of Abaya and Rava is also machlekes of Eidim Shahuchshul B'Sev Huzma. This machlekes of if witnesses were first refuted and then Hazama is machlekes Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Lasa. Because Chadam and Neragin, one says that he gets killed, but Chadam and Neragin, and one says he doesn't get killed. So this time says the Gemara, meaning to say if when the person testified regarding something, if he's going to get killed or not, is a machlekes. And to stem Rabbi Lazar who damei neragin, we could bring a raya that Rabbi Lazar holds like a baya that holds that you don't get killed. Rabbi Lazar, he says the following halacha: Edim shahu kushu b'nefesh. If you have witnesses that were refuted, not huzam, they're refuted regarding a person's life. Loikin, they get lashes because of what's called loisana, of saying false testimony. Now, even though it's a lav shem ma'isa, it has no action. You don't usually get malchus. But the Gemara brings explicitly Masechet Malchus in the beginning of the Masechet that Malchus Beit Mizaymin, you learn that from a positive, it's Tigu Etz Tzadik. Fine. But says the Gemara like this, a cheshbon. If you think this Rabbi Lazar is the one who says that if you would get Hazama afterwards, Nedagin, you would get executed. So the question is like this: even when there is no hazama, am I loikin? Why do you get lashes for the false testimony? It's a negative prohibition that can be given over to a capital punishment, which that you shouldn't do this, so that the court doesn't kill you. Now, any negative prohibition that could be given as a warning that you're going to get capital punishment ain't like in the love. You don't get lashes because Mrs. Bezdin, the capital punishment is the punishment of the law. So how could you go ahead and say he gets lashes, but if he's going to get hazama, he's going to get executed? Obviously, he's the one that says that no, that once you get refuted, you can't get killed anymore because you're already hukash. So that's a raya that he holds like a baya. Says the Gemara, Laikin, why do they get lashes? But trade nenu. It's 2 against 2. They said he killed. They said he didn't kill. So my chaz the samrahani. Why are you relying on the other pair of witnesses? As Rashi explains, I understand by hazam it's a chiddush, it's a gzeis hakasef that you rely on the second other pair of witnesses. By chasha, that's not a chiddush to say that when you're removing the Torah that they're just contradicting each other. So Mabai says, but you're right. We're talking about where the victim came with his own 2 feet. The one that they said he was killed is who walks alive. So obviously they lied, and obviously they're going to get malchus for loisana. But again, we do see that this machlekes by Rav is machlekes Rabbi Yechanan and Rabbi Lazar. Now look at the next Mishnah that continues on this theme of the Geneva and Kefil and Dal Vehei regarding the Peturim, which was the flip side of the previous Mishnah. I think we'll leave this for tomorrow. Thank you to any time posting us.